they're almost the same, but they're slightly different, you know, because they're more on the
Well, that's why
Buddhist.
if you watch, and by the way, we're talking about the interview between Germ and what's his name, Rian Swigelaar,
Rian Swigelaar.
who is the main pastor or reverend of the Satanic Church, and they make emphasis that they're not the Church of Satan.
Yeah. And also, he mentioned they don't have like a hierarchy. So I don't know
I
what
think
he just says he's the leader. So I don't know what
I think one of the definitive aspects is that he refers to the American concept and birth, and then the South African version of that is separate from that entity. So he speaks very much about the organization and how they function and what they consider the constitution to say, and who's the deacons
but
of the.
Even in America, there's a lot of divergences. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that is different. Even the Church of Satan also believes closer to what they do, as opposed to the temple, the Satanic temple. That is again another. That is more like the
rituals.
Political. No, not even that. They again more political. They take on governments. They're trying to win ground or popularity, so to say, because they've got an ideology.
I don't know if it's also like a clever, and I mean I suppose we officially starting now.
Yeah, go for it.
We already started.
Yeah, we're deep into the topic, and I mean, if you were to ever walk into a church of Satan, you wouldn't know it would be a church of Satan, because it's not like there are signages and fires and people dressed in little costumes pretending to be demons and being possessed. So welcome to the show. This is Fair Space, and wherever you find yourself at, may this be a mental free space for you to think about some concepts that might seem controversial inside four walls in a building, but with today's current epidemic, we find ourselves in lockdown, and you have a lot of time to think. So welcome to our show. This is Daryl Williams, DW, Tyrone, and Linley Pillay.
I think where I wanted to start with was, I don't know if they're either playing us or if that genuinely is where they are. Because, I mean, if you were to openly admit that you worship Satan and Satan is a being, then you'd have to preclude that God also exists, because the one doesn't live without the other.
Yeah. Well, that's why he went out of his way to say that they're not that. You know what I mean? But even if they were, man, like that's why I agree with you with what you're saying. Like, even the devil's not gonna come up to you and go, "Yeah, I'm the devil." You know what I mean? So I don't know. I've met other Satanists that also have that similar ideology. They don't drink blood. They don't do anything. They don't even believe that Satan exists. That they just take him as like a figure, like something to look up to, a type of personality, like a afbreaker, for lack of a better word. Like I don't know what the English word for that is.
Defiant.
A rebel.
Like they kind of have to. Yeah, they kind of have to live in defiance of the reality, like Lindy's saying, that there is a superior being and that they're on the losing team. But I think there's a lot to be said for a lot of their causes is for the underdog. Even the LGBT community play the underdog card. They're like the new underdogs of society.
I don't know if they're the underdogs anymore.
He makes it seem more like... no, we the heads are like we like the guys on top, and it's like an exclusive club of people or like an exclusive breed of person like that will come to their thing. That's why they like, we're not inviting anybody. We're not saying come and look and check what it's like. You'll know if you're with us or not, man. Look at your personality. If that's what you like, then just go. Just come be with people that's like you, man.
Well, my biggest issue is that, and not with him. I mean, I
don't care.
I'm not saying I have respect for them for coming to that conclusion, but you'll always find that their pathway to either Satanism or atheism is via Christianity. It's almost like
Yeah.
you can count 9 out of 10 people, or 9.5 out of 10 people will come via the path of Christianity. And it's not that they have the issue with the Bible or whatever it is, it's more to do with the judgment of people.
Mm.
Christians have the tendency to get to a point of when they, well, especially when you use the Bible as the word, if it becomes that foundational thing, then everything else becomes wrong. And then you live in this world of right and wrong. And when you're deciding that something is wrong, you're deciding for everyone in the world that it's wrong.
Yeah.
So if you consider, let's say, drinking as wrong, then drinking is wrong for everyone, isn't it? If it's fundamentally wrong, if it's intrinsically wrong, we want to put it that way.
Yeah. That's the problem also, like with the human perspective on things as well, man. Like in in comparison to anything else, Christianity makes everything look wrong, man. You know what I'm saying? But it also makes God look like a bit of a hypocrite, because everything he says people shouldn't do, then he goes and do in the Bible, man. Or he tells certain people that you guys are allowed to do this and you aren't. So I think people like that run into that issue as well, man. That not
Yeah.
only is it what you're saying, Nani, but also people that aren't Christians, they look at it from the outside and they go, hmm,
But
here's a
isn't
lot
what you're
of.
doing wrong?
How many times haven't you gotten that, man? Like, you're just having a good time. It's like, but aren't you a Christian? And you're like, wait, is that you're a Christian, but you don't even know if it's right or wrong, man. So I
Yeah.
agree with you. Like, whether directly or indirectly, most people decide to abandon the thought of God as a all knowing, all seeing, all like the one who created the universe type thing. They abandon it because of the people, man. Because unfortunately, okay, I can't speak for God, man. I don't want to do that. But unfortunately, most people only know who God is, or that there's a Jesus or whatever, because Christians exist, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the
Well,
problem,
they would consider that a win.
yeah, but the
Mm.
problem
For
is,
following the commission.
yeah. But the people, like, you're standing on the outside, you're looking at them, you're going like, oh my God, you guys make him look bad, man. You know what I mean? Make you
Yeah.
ask the question then about God, like, how does he feel about it? Does he even care about it?
But I have a story there. I mean, this guy is an American trader. He turned 73, so we're not gonna work on a course together. But he's got a lot of courses about beliefs and stuff and trading and things like that. So he was saying that, telling his not life story, but his belief change story. When he was born into a pastor's house, evangelical Christian. And he said, for the most part, up until a certain age, he believed that to be true. And then that was true for everything. And he said, I don't know when it changed, but he then became not an atheist, but sort of freed from that belief of just Christianity. And he said, it's amazing for every jump of belief, how suddenly that was the absolute truth for everything. Then he became a political libertarian and this and that, and 5 changes maybe in his lifetime. And he said he ultimately came to the conclusion that it's an emotional interpretation of the world. And the worst thing you can do is then presume that the world is according to your perspective, that it has to align with your rights and wrongs and what you're imposing on the world.
Yeah.
When you create a system of right and wrong, somehow it has to adhere to it, and that everybody else should care about it. And you learn very quickly and in a hard way that nobody does.
Yeah. It's I don't know if you guys know David Bowie's song Quicksand. Have you heard that song?
Mm.
It's like, I think the line goes, I'm struggling between the light and dark while others see their target divine symmetry, like, and then the chorus,
Mm.
so the chorus goes, don't believe in yourself, don't perceive with belief, because the truth is, knowledge only comes with death's release, man. So it's like, you can't perceive the world or make every decision or put like this filter of no, I believe in God, so everything then must go through that, man. Because at the end of the day, like you say, it's an emotional thing, man. That's all it's gonna ever be. You're never gonna really think rationally, and even up to the point of that divine. Like, if you speak to any Christian, what is their main goal, man? It's like, I just want to be like Jesus, or I want to be exactly like God, or I was made in His image, whatever the case may be. So now you on that trip, you're basically saying everybody that's not that, that's not with you on the journey, wants to be like the opposite. You know what I mean, man? So I agree with you. That's a very emotional perception because it makes you switch off part of your brain, like the part of your brain that must think. You'll switch that off and you'll go like, nah, that's not in the Bible. But you can see it in front of you, man. I don't know if I'm making sense, but like,
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to rationalize with people, man. Myself and my wife was watching the interview together, and we were like, people aren't ready to hear this, man. People aren't ready to hear like a rational explanation for Satanism.
Well, especially when they were taught, like you maybe not even taught it. You exposed in your life to a perception of it, and be it movies, books, what people talk about, and you have a perception of it, and just the comments alone proved it. Like, but why didn't they just call it atheism then? Like, but they're not calling it atheism. Can you just listen maybe to what the guy is saying? Man? It's like, what you believe about it is not right. What he's saying is what they're doing. So either you believe that or you don't.
And what was most interesting was the things that he did consider like Satanism. Man. Like he mentioned a few other names that Christian people actually like hold up in high esteem. You know what I mean? It's like, oh no, that's actually Satanism. That's also. And then I'm like, wait, rewind. Did you say?
Wait. Like what? The rewind.
Like, okay, so I don't know if you guys have been taking note the last year or two. There's been this vision board movement that came back. And then you guys remember years ago there was The Secret, right?
Yes.
And in there,
yes. With that pastor, the one pastor that testifies to everything.
Yeah, but I mean, that was like a craze, man. Whether in the Christian or in the secular, or it was across the board, people were crazy about The Secret.
Can I just say this though? I've seen that The Secret is on Netflix as well.
Yeah, and it's not.
I think
it's not.
No, but the Secret, they were talking about the book, The Secret.
Yeah.
And that's basically it's some variation on the law of attraction.
So yeah. So anyway, but now in the last 2 years, it's become like a craze within the church, man. They don't call it The Secret. They don't call it the law of attraction, but there's this thing about the vision board that's come back. Like, no, put it on your vision board, and they use the scripture. I think it's Habakkuk. There's a scripture where he talks about writing down.
People die because perish because of lack of vision or something.
No, not that. It's the write it down on a tablet and it will come to pass or something like that.
No, they must go buy iPads.
So anyhow, so that's been a thing. And if you really go deeper into it, it's the law of attraction. So that's obviously Tony Robbins, as Alan Watts, those guys. They used to speak about that quite a bit. And even Terence McKenna. So yeah, he goes, oh, we align ourselves with a lot of people. Actually, if you think about it, like the teachings of Tony Robbins. I'm like, wait, can you rewind? Because if you listen to the name it and claim it thing, it's basically law of attraction. It's you going, I call this into being, I claim that car in the name of Jesus, and then that's all you think about for the next 2 weeks. And the first bit of money you have, you invest in a car, and next week you say, oh, God bless me with a car. You know what I mean? So I'm going, a lot of the things that the church actually holds dear to, it's not just one example, but if you look at some of this, like I read on their website, there's statements. They don't call it the rules or commands, whatever. They've got like satanic statements. A lot of it aligns with what the church believes. There's only like a few divergences, like the love thing. They're not big on love. They're like not big on forgiveness as opposed to retribution. Consequence, yeah. Or I won't say revenge. What's the word, man?
Not karma.
Yeah, it's almost punishment, but not revenge. Somewhere in between there. Like I can't think of the word now. But it's like people must pay for the wrong that they do. You know what I mean? Whether by you or by someone else, you don't let things go. Make sure that they learn the lesson so that they can be better people. You know what I mean? But it's
True.
yeah.
That's true. That
No,
must unpack. That's
no,
a
but I
deep
mean,
one.
if you read that post-charismatic thing, they also talk about the faith, word of faith movement there and those things. It's always been
Exactly.
self-centered, man. You know what I mean? If you listen to
Mm.
Satanism or the way he tried to explain it, it's self-centered. He kept saying self-study, self-improvement. And if you look at most of what the church teaches, we were speaking about earlier, they teach you that there's always something wrong with you. If you keep coming here, we're gonna make you a better you. And they just use the scripture or they use Jesus as like a benchmark. That's what we're aiming for. That's who you're gonna be. Come on, come on. You've got homework. Yeah, anyway, that's my 2 cents. It was interesting for me to hear what it actually is, man. I've heard people tell me, other Satanists tell me, but sometimes people like to talk junk. So it was nice to hear an
Yeah.
official statement from a leader, from a guy who actually runs the organization, man.
I think to a certain degree we have to have some kind of perspective on where does the theology actually come from then.
They don't believe in
Because
fear.
no, because I mean, yes, I mean you can refer to things as, I think the word is law, like tales of or like practices, and the what is it, the Satanic Bible and those kind of things, and then from there the theologians derive different denominations, because theology and practice doesn't coexist, or there's no similarities. Because one of the things I was getting from what you were saying was that, look, we the South African version, we have our own way of doing things, and I was thinking about that aspect.
But it's not counter Christianity, man. It's not like what we were taught Satan is. They're just using Satan as like an archetype or like a picture of how we're supposed to behave. But they're not serving him or worshipping him or elevating him in any way. He names like a few names and he goes like it's the different faces of the same thing. But it's in more an ideology and a perspective on life, as opposed to this is how I have to be if I want to be part of this thing, man, as opposed to other religion, you know. So
Yeah.
in that regard, they didn't find it anywhere. He actually goes as far as to say it existed thousands of years before Christianity came on the scene. You understand? It just had a different name. So if you look across all time, like Christianity is one of the babies still when it comes to spiritual practices. So if you look at the pagans, they also have gods that they serve, and there's always also some kind of dark, or what's the word, antagonist. There's always something fighting against what we
Good and
claim
evil,
to.
good versus evil.
That's that thing, yeah. So the problem is that because we grew up the way we did, or in my case, let me speak for myself, I grew up the way I did, the devil, Satan, Lucifer was that character, man.
Yeah,
So
me too.
that kind of forms your brain the minute you hear Satan. You think, but now what is he and what do they worship? Because that is how we were trained. You have to worship something. And if you're not worshipping God, you're worshipping something else. You know what I mean? So it's nice that you could clear that
Sorry
up.
guys, did I just disappear there?
Yes,
My
you're
bad.
going out of your Zoom screen in it all. But
Google on your phone, bro.
I'm no, I'm doing it purposefully because I'm busy uploading some content that I'd like to share. The reason being is I also got a little story to tell. Earlier, Lily stole my limelight there. I was going to do my little story. So yesterday, I had the opportunity to have this like unexpected conversation with my two brother-in-laws regarding religion. The one, for like, just to put it into perspective, so we're all three different denominations. Boom, boom. He's the eldest one is practicing old apostolic, and the younger one is a Catholic. But there's a lot behind the relationship. So as the conversation starts off, I just asked, because we were talking about diet, and I was saying about being a vegetarian and the aspect that Daniel and then he jumped in, the Mr. Old Apostolic. So he took us to a place where Noah, after getting off the ark, spoke about eating meat. He's allowed to eat meat. God says you're allowed to eat meat right there. And he's breaking away from where the vegetarians and how different perspectives and practices and so forth. And just to elaborate, I'm talking about the things from the beginning of time, which kind of supersedes any other practices. So the practice of Satanism and so forth is kind of correlating to the fact that, let's just say, the Canaanites didn't, or did. Cain killed Abel, so Cain started eating meat, and then without mentioning, the younger brother then steps in, and he starts quoting theology that has to do with a series called Supernatural, where he's saying that God has a sister, which is darkness, and elaborating on how Cain killed Abel to go to hell because it would be the first sin, and he spared Abel the almost like the journey there. So he's quoting from a series, his own thing. And I'm standing and listening to this conversation between those two, and they're having a real conversation. And eventually the Bible gets brought in. So the older brother throws the younger brother because, he's a guy that doesn't, he's like, I assume you don't have a Bible. The younger brother's offended. He's like, what? I'm still a practicing Catholic. I have a Bible. He goes to get the Bible. Bible's filled with dust. So
He has it. He has it.
right, and we page to Genesis. And we page to Genesis, and they start reasoning out this thing, and I'm in the conversation listening to them. And I didn't drop any gems of brilliance, but it was unique to listen
That's
to
a
that
very arrogant
conversation.
statement.
Okay, well, I have gems, but I didn't drop any.
Well, the older
Brilliance.
brother
Oh,
did
brilliance.
say, look, that older brother, Mr. Old Apostolic, also accused me of, he's like, he quoted the line from Devil's Advocate. He first said Devil's Advocate, and I looked at him and I said, what? And then he's like, yeah, vanity, it's my favorite sin. It's the last line in the movie. And I look at him like, yeah, feed you, man. Anyways, coming back to this, the point I wanted to make with the story is that they break away to such different perspectives. And if I'm able to share this content, if you give me permission,
Wait,
Mr. Host.
I need to share.
So they break away to this content, and as I'm asking, I'm engaging with Mr. Old Apostolic. Like, look, he's saying he has church at home now because they're not practicing as per the religion, the denominational religion. So I asked him, so how are you telling the story that we're talking about in Genesis, for example? Because he said that he's having church at home with his kids, his two kids. And he said he's relating to it as a story. And it's easier to tell because, you can paint a picture. So I mentioned that, you can bring it into context. And when you're telling a story, you relate to the time. So you paint a picture of the time and the context that it is written in and the reason that they're practicing it. And then as I'm saying this, am I allowed to know? Yeah. As I'm saying this, the younger brother walks in and he's like, bam, this is what I'm talking about. So he's got the Bible in a comic format, like this, good and evil. And he's got a Bible, a comic Bible. So it's like the comic books. You would read through it, and it's got a title like this. As well as, if I share this is the basic context of the book. So there's other examples as well and different stories in the Bible. And the reason why I bring this into context is because if they are referring to the Dark Lord, then at some point there's the story of light. And there's a lot of contradiction that I've discovered in just perusing the different denominations, as he described it, or different factions that have different theoretical outcomes. And the same thing applies to the Christians, because the Christians have different theoretical outcomes to sin and who Satan is, in accordance with, like, the younger brother was referring to, the good and evil battle. And I mean, he enjoys the series of Lucifer, and the devil isn't such a bad guy. He's more like the interpretation of free will and the extremities of not choosing God's will and going, my will be done, what I want to do, in order to create the reality that we can have free will to choose to be, you know, on the other end. I don't want to say practicing and doing God's will, but if you know what I mean, versus my will. So wherever the Church of Satan finds itself, it's somewhere in that spectrum of will and how they want to exercise and practice that.
Sorry, put the noise outside here.
Is it?
Yeah.
Hey, hello. That's a shout out to everybody that's watching from Mitchell's Plain on Mitchell's
Sure, it's
Fiber.
got a bit rough.
Punt,
out
punt.
here, so. No, but I hear you. But that's the problem with religion, man, or defending a point of view. You guys know I like to argue.
Devil's advocate.
I used to think I was trying to make people understand me, but now I realize I enjoy arguing, man. So,
Welcome to the club.
no, but now now that I know, I must try and control it. But what I'm trying to say is,
sorry, just to
go for it.
Sorry to break the word, and hopefully you don't. Just to elaborate for those that are watching, we are kind of the devil's advocate right now, talking about the Church of Satan, just bring you into context that we're not really defending them, but just be defending the truth and the perspective and freedom to explore it. Tyrone, you were saying.
Yeah. So that's actually good that you said that. So sometimes you defend your point of view, man. And that is sometimes what happens with religion. It's because, like, look how you described your older brother-in-law. He is an old apostolic and he is a Catholic. And so we quickly get into those kind of boxes, man. And besides the fact that other people tell us, we also start to take ownership of our box. And the minute somebody else is now, no, but that's, the magic word, that's wrong. And now that becomes a thing, man. My daughter, my mother, my mother, not my mother-in-law, my mother. She started to encourage my wife and I to let my daughter watch this super book, man. So I said, okay, cool. I'll give it a try. I'll watch it first. I want to first see what they have to say. So it's a Bible story, man. It's Bible stories, which is cool for me because the stories are good. The stories, you can learn a lot from the stories. The issue that I had was at the end of the story, now they come with this little revelation, I'd say, or like
antidote.
Yeah, so it's a cartoon. Yeah. I mean, it's kids, and I'm like, yo, you guys are quiet, shaping people's minds here now, because you get to get this child to start to believe a perspective from really small. And in there's obviously there's Lucifer because they do the story of the beginning, and then there's this whole big fight where Lucifer's there as a good-looking angel, and then God kicks him out of heaven, and as he's falling, he gets uglier. I'm like, nah, man, this is what's done. So the point I'm trying to make is this.
That's bad.
Even Satanism, the way that dude is explaining it as a religion, man, you can rationalize it and you can work it out in your brain and find reasons to believe it, man. The way I was taught Christianity, I can sit down and I can defend it in many ways. The way we believe, we can sit down and defend it and believe it, and in any way we can, like, because we're smart people, man. So that is the issue that I have with both sides, man. On the one hand, he's going, no, we're not inclusive, we're exclusive. So if you like this, you're welcome to come, man. Do you understand? So it's almost like saying, if you're not like this, stay away. Where Christianity will say they're inclusive, but we know the truth is they've also got this very strict criteria, man. So
yeah,
I can understand your brothers-in-laws, man. They believe their thing. They haven't checked out their thing, but they believe it, man. And it's difficult to get through to people like that, and even Christians in general.
Yeah, I kind of got to the conclusion that I don't try to get through to them. I just take that journey with them through it. Because I think that every person goes on a journey through it. It's like Lenny was making a reference to, I think he's what, 74 years old?
73.
73?
Although, I
I
mean, at
mean,
73, what's another year?
yeah, but I mean,
For a 73-year-old, that year is valuable.
it's a compliment.
That
Another year is a
year is like,
compliment.
wow, I
Yeah.
made it another year. I ain't dead yet.
Whereas, so I mean, if you live that long and you get to change, like you said, your trajectory, your belief trajectory, 5 times in your lifetime, it also encompasses society and where the world is at and how we perceive the religion and the practice thereof. The one of I think one of the most defining aspects of this Church of Satan of South Africa, if I mention them correctly, is that you were saying that people aren't ready for that, but South Africa isn't ready for that. And in his interview, the context that he's painting is that this thing has been happening in America like a decade ago already. We emerging now, and our society is kind of ready to receive things like this. And let's just be candid, in South Africa, there's going to be a direct correlation between witchcraft practice, Moti, all of those things, and the Church of Satan. Like, where do they find themselves? Because where we stand, like we were saying, Christians, for example, would have a bias to think that they're all under the same umbrella, maybe functioning differently, but for one objective, and that is to defend the gates of hell again and make sure that they will not stand against the church, as quoted in the Bible. They will not prevail. The gates of hell will not prevail.
Well, I mean, I think my biggest problem with it all is that it seems almost like, and I'm saying this almost like an outsider, but that Christianity can't seem to function without an enemy, like a literal enemy. And I've heard it more than one time out of a few pastors' mouths. Like when you contest whether hell exists or Satan is there's like, how can you say that it's a heretical? I'm like, okay, so why do you need it to exist? What about that existing makes the truth or God more relevant?
Yeah.
And the thing is, how can I say? And we do it in life also. It's like we really can't function unless we've got something to work or hate, if you want to put it that way. So how can I say, the reason why some people get better at what they do is because they want to beat everyone else.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we must remove competition. I think that's very good for the human experience, but it just seems like it's a prerequisite of Christianity to have a literal Satan and a hell. Otherwise, what would be the point? If you want to put it that way, because half of what people do is that Christianity, not necessarily anything to do with the Bible or what Christianity is really about, but Christians have made it about heaven. Your life now is about heaven, which means there must be some reward for behaving well, and there must be a punishment for behaving badly.
Yeah.
And
However, sorry to interject Eleni, and break your word. However, if you think about it, then there, by default, should be rewards for behaving badly if you're in the right camp.
But that's
that,
thinking about
well,
conversely, as in the opposite of Christianity.
you're going to dabble into a circular argument there, because then you would presume that if Satan was a polar opposite and a literal being, that he'd have power to do so. But while even in Christians' own theology, it would presume that if Satan is a created being, he doesn't have the same power. So therefore he can't dole out gifts, in the afterlife at least.
But then I'll
Maybe
be
now.
saying that he's then, I mean, then by default, we're saying he's forced to punish even those that follow him.
Yeah,
No,
but
I
there's no
don't think he's
punishment.
the punisher. He might be executing the punishment.
I don't
But
even think it's that. I think he's just
But you see, this is where you get to the point of saying that then you'd have to conclude that God Himself punishes,
Yeah.
because it's saying that I've set forth the criteria of what is right and wrong. This is for those that are right, and this is for those that are wrong. And then, like, and even Jesus' statement when people came to ask him, like, what is the Son of Man's mission? He said, look, I didn't come to judge, but the system that I have set up will judge you. Um, you can read into that whatever you want to, but the thing is,
Pandora's box, dude.
it's like your parents saying, you can go into the road,
But you
but I'm
can't
not going
stop.
to stop a car from knocking you.
Mm.
There's a consequence to your decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Adam and Eve story is about. The saying, look, you have free will, man. You can do whatever you want to, but
There's boundaries.
there's boundaries to that, and there's going to be consequences when you make decisions. And I'm not in the camp that believes that it's literal happening. So
Operation.
um, I think that as Christians or as people that look into the Bible and look for truth, they need to understand how the Bible was written.
Mm.
And maybe most people won't do that because it will take that carpet out under their feet.
Yeah.
And, I think there's a lot more uncertainty than we would like there to be. And that's why conversations with people of the Church of Satan is uncomfortable, not because um, we're okay with our beliefs, it's because we're not really okay with our beliefs.
Yeah.
And they have to be certain things. And if they're not that certain things, then I have to question what I believe.
Yeah.
You missed one thing, man. You're waiting for you to say it the whole time.
What?
Besides the having an enemy is also having an excuse. Like if the devil exists, then that's what's wrong with my life, man. Every bad thing that happens to me, it's not my choices anymore. Now
Jeez,
it's the
I don't even think like that.
yeah, no, but what I mean,
I,
you were saying the why do Christians need it to be true, man? And I'm saying that is another reason on top of having something to fight, also having an excuse for what goes wrong, man, as opposed to standing up and going, I made bad choices. I can just go.
I think
I
I'm
can
no, but
about to
I
make a
think that
bad
that is
decision.
a podcast on its
on its
own.
own. Okay, just write it down. Write it down. But yeah, I mean, so because that's like the devil's role is to make my life uncomfortable. So also to tack on to your point, for because what I was taught as a child was the devil's already going to hell. He's technically not in hell. He's going to hell, right? And his time is almost up, and he's gonna try and pull everybody with him that he can. You know what I mean? That is like, so don't sin, otherwise you're gonna get the same fate that he gets.
I think
In
we
that,
all grew up in that.
yeah. So they teach you that.
Mm.
So in the essence of in the if he doesn't exist, then who's pulling me down, man? You understand? So it's like, wait,
So, sorry to
why?
interject it, Adam. Just let's just pull it into context. When you were watching that super book, what context did they put sin or like that kind of behavior into? Because I mean, like they
Okay,
depicted the devil. Is he
let me
trying to
play.
take the children with him, kind of thing? Like if you do
No,
wrong
okay.
things,
So it's the whole Bible in story form, like your dude's comic book. So I just watched the first episode, and in that the first lesson then is about disobedience. So it's about the normal family, a boy, girl, mother, father, and then the father gives the boy an instruction and he doesn't listen. And so instead of the father, so while that's father, I don't want to go deep into it. The father leaves. He says, "Don't touch this. Don't go into my room." I don't want. You
you
can
used
go
to
watch it,
think they
man.
were the river going deep.
Yeah. So no, man. I didn't want to tell the whole story, but anyway, the father says, "Don't go
Okay.
into the room," and then they go into the room, right? So now, while the father's gone, the superbook pitches up, and the book travels and takes them into the Bible and puts them there. It's most now a
Super book.
sci-fi. Yeah.
No man,
So
that is salty.
yeah, exactly. So they time travel them to where it
That's
happens,
bad.
and then
That's bad.
they witness this battle of Lucifer saying, "I want to, I want to sit on the mountain of God or whatever," and then Michael and him start to fight, and then God kicks him out of heaven, throws him down to earth or whatever. And as he falls, like I say, he becomes that. Then from there they switch over to Garden of Eden, and they show Eve catching on nonsense and the serpent and that. And then at the end of let's say, for example, they read it. It would be cool, fine, I'm cool with that. River's good for River to read the story. The problem that they have is now they switch back to the family, and the father comes in and he goes, you see, just like Adam disobeyed, and now they come and give some kind of theological or doctrinal thing, man. You understand? Of the devil is this, and one day you're going to end up just like him if you don't do as your father says, man. So that is the thing that I have an issue with, because River will grow up. Let's say she did watch that with me. She will grow up with that in her mind all the time. And whether she takes that father in heaven or father literally, guys, you just know me. I could be very wrong with a lot of the things I ask her to do. And you know what I mean? So I basically teach her to not think for herself and just do as you told me. So that's the issue that I have, man. But that's Superbook. In our household, my father was the one who did the teaching, man. So he taught you that way. The devil is the wants to be like God. So your job is to not be like God, but you must be like God. You understand what I'm saying? That's how confusing it was for me as a child. Like, you're saying, wait, I must be like Christ. And you said Christ and God is like one, okay? But the devil got kicked out for wanting to be like God. So I don't understand what's happening here, guys.
But anyway, there's English wording there.
Yeah, obviously. No,
I wanted to be God versus wanted to be like you.
Like God. Yeah, no, I'm over emphasizing. But imagine hearing that story as a 6-year-old. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So it was hardcore. So now you grow up with that. Every sin that you do is the devil pulling you further down with him. So now you meet a guy from a Satanist church and say, nah, we don't even think he's real. They're like, oh shit. Now who's pulling me down, guys?
Well,
I don't make light of it, but that is the case.
Then it makes life more complicated when you start asking what is sin also then.
Yeah.
Because that's a rabbit hole that you jump down into.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey,
we made Pandora's box with your comment. You shouldn't have made your comment.
In today's show, just for those that are watching, I feel like we are having a conversation around a lot of circular arguments without getting thrown into the wormhole. So it's good that you bring it up. I mean, you can talk about it and not go deep into it.
The thing for me is that I'm not going to say things must be proven specifically, but I'm not in the camp that believes that there's a actual Lucifer, Satan being that is the evil one.
Okay.
And also can't say that I don't ever will believe in that or won't ever believe in that. But and I do think people should read the Bible and study it properly, man, for what it is.
Okay.
Not this foundational book to determine how life is, not a manual for you to live. They were not writing that book thinking that you remotely were going to be around. If the writers could probably predict the time, we wouldn't exist because they expected it in their lifetime still. It only makes us look bad when we make the time scale smaller, because very little of what they say will happen happens, and certainly not in the time frames that they say. And I mean, countless people have predicted Jesus' second coming, and we're still here, and they're not here. And
yeah, look, while you're laughing, let me elaborate. I was thinking about that very point. And look, the epidemic is one of those situations where conspiracy theorists and end-time revelationists find themselves all in the running for the truth. Because this could be the end of the world, or this could just be a conspiracy, or it could be both. And like you were saying now, it's almost like it's pertinent to the existence of those that live in the end times for shit to go wrong, so that they can feel like it's going to take place in their lifetime, because that is always where that Christian finds himself. But like, we are living in the end times. I remember growing up and seeing the, on the walls would be normal murals, and then there'd be like this one massive mural, like, sort your life out or you're going to hell. It's gonna happen in whatever year. So, like you say, you have to draw some kind of conclusion if you're going to think that this is end times.
I think it's very simple. And maybe I'm oversimplifying, but to me, and there's always the thing of lawlessness. So some people fear lawlessness, and some people want lawlessness. And I would say that if you could write down a one-liner for what lawlessness is, it's out of control. And that is generally, I would ascribe to immaturity. So immature people want the world to burn because the lawless nature of that means I don't have to adhere to things and I don't have to be responsible for things. To a degree, certain protests, I mean, I'm not saying the protests of current year is that, but I mean, you know that when you were a teenager and things was going absolutely chaos at the school, there's a certain relief you have because it means I don't have to obey the norms now. So I can get away with stuff and I won't be responsible.
I think they call it the purge.
But lawlessness and I wouldn't say law abiding is the polar opposite. I'm saying maturity is the opposite, where you realize discipline, patience, consequence is the results of freedom. So and I don't see that's my biggest issue in that churches aren't fighting for freedom. They're fighting against evil. But if that evil is not real, then what are you fighting, man?
I think it's look, without going into the circular argument, but coming back to Tyrone's point, it is to create the circular argument that if you're fighting evil, then evil is your excuse for captivity, for not taking on freedom and not taking ownership. You can use it as a get out of jail free card. Like, I'm not responsible.
The interview and at least the interview that we are reacting to or commenting on, he just makes a case for Satan not existing. He doesn't make a case for evil not existing. Do you know what I'm saying? So yes, I'm also I'm not I don't say I don't believe it. I also question the villain thing of the devil, a person that is orchestrating the destruction of man. But there is also evil. Maybe evil is the wrong word, but there is this thing that is driving people to do things that is outside of the good of man. Do you know what I'm saying? Like a guy, and I don't want to go into a psychological thing, please. Oh, guys, please. But there must be something that is driving people to want to do something opposite or harm people, man.
Can I say this?
I don't want to make it say. I know there is a
before
argument.
Daryl jumps in there, why are we not okay with believing that is ourselves? Because
that is what I was gonna say.
Where does that come from, man? That's what I'm saying.
No, but the thing is, like, no human is gonna accept that we collectively are okay with women getting raped and babies getting murdered and things like that. No? But the reality is, if I look at something like smoking, now I'm sure we all lived through the period where smoking inside buildings was normal.
Sure.
And then there was this drive suddenly for it not to be okay in buildings. And it's like the world accepted that. Now my thing,
because
my thing is,
stand outside in the cold and smoke.
But where there's a willingness to do something, it can be done.
Yeah.
When people come into agreement on something, it's just done. The violence and that stuff that we say is a problem, we clearly don't want gone.
I don't know about that. We do want it gone.
But no. If you ask anybody straight to their face, drug cartel lords don't want violence gone because how are they going to keep fear in their people?
Okay, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that. when
Okay.
used as a tool, yes.
Mm.
However, even if, like, for example, you're smoking example, smokers still want to smoke indoors, man. They're just not
Yes,
publicly allowed to do
but
it.
the thing
That's what
is,
I'm.
humanity as a whole just bought into the concept and applied it because they f- they were in agreement with it.
But that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, yes, let's say the same applies for rape and killing and all that. There will still be a guy or a woman looking at another person going, I will rape that person. I'll rape them in their mood.
Yes.
Do you understand? So I'm saying, where does that things come from?
I
Where in
think
the
that's got
mind
to
does
do
that
with the
things come
fall of man, because
Yes.
the the thing is, and then that's why I would suppose that there's a a story about the fall of man. So by making the decision that wasn't the best one, it created a pathway for there to be
from?
another
Deterioration.
option, another option that is not the right one. It was not good for you. But now you add free will into the equation and multiply the amounts and scaling up the amount of people. There is a collective want for evil and there's a collective want for good.
That's what I'm saying.
But
Yeah,
that's
and
always
I'm just
at play
asking
with
where.
each other. But that doesn't mean it's a literal enemy. And how can I say, fundamentally, we don't necessarily want to harm people, but we might unintentionally harm. And then there's the fall of a human to the point where they intentionally want to harm.
Mm.
look, I look at it like this: that I'm going to use a little situation. Let's just I'm going to use a little
Nah,
antidote.
don't bring your family into it, bro. I'm joking. Go ahead.
That's true. I shouldn't though. But anyways, that's the story. I think it all has to do with curiosity. Like, the baby girl fell off the bed because she was curious about how far to crawl. And the first time she fell off, she realized, hey, that's a bit too far. Then they, you know, now she crawls to the end and she looks down, but she's still curious about how to get down.
Mm.
And that is how this whole story of good versus evil and the I almost want to say you were referring to this force, Tyrone, behind that
I
decision.
didn't say force. I was just asking what it is.
You were saying force and like you know there was dark
No,
connotations to it.
I
But
was
let me
just
say
saying,
this though.
where do those things come from? And is it a force, or
Yeah.
is it a psychological thing, or is it
Now now this
trying
is
to
what I was
explain?
saying.
Yeah.
If you bring the baby into consideration, it's the first time ever that she's exploring things. And that is us as humans, we exploring things. And the thing that drives that exploration is curiosity. And one of the I almost want to say a fundamental aspect of humanity and your physical being is you're curious whether, like the lyrics of the song says, I put my hand on the stove to see if I still bleed because nothing hurts anymore.
That's a good
I
song,
feel
man.
kind of I feel kind of free.
Mm.
And we test the limits of our mortality in order to determine, with curiosity, in order to determine what is the extent of mortality. And murder is one of the fundamental aspects of that testament. How far can you push a human physically before they are dead? And then what is the weight of a soul? Like, why does it actually matter, that person's existence and so forth? Then you get into the psychological and philosophical debate. But physically, we've always had a curiosity about how far can we go. And the rape and sex is just as important as death and mortality, because sexuality and reproduction of humanity is, I mean, you dabble in those things. And I mean, I speak to some couples and married couples that are looking at in vitro and they can't have children, and the importance of that and where they find themselves at it is so crucial to their entire marriage and relationship. And then you get, like we were saying, the exploration of death and murder. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I'm just gonna, if you get a chance, the Purge. I made mention of it, but the first Purge is the
Mm.
latest one that came out. So they had a string of movies that was like Fast and the Furious, and it was
Is
unnecessary.
there a part 9?
You know what I mean? So the fifth version of the Purge is called the First Purge, and to make reference to Linley's statement, in the synopsis of the movie, the gangsters are on this island and they have full reign. So this area is always having violence. But the new government takes over and they call it the experiment, where they cordon off the island and they pay people $5,000 to stay on the island for 12 hours while rape and murder and vandalism and all kinds of crimes are legalized for 12 hours, but you're going to get 5 grand if you stay on the island. Now the gangsters end up defending the people because they're like, this shit is going to put us out of business. Because our business is rape, murder, death, violence. You know, we don't fight with curiosity. We know who we are. We know that we use these things to exploit humanity. But if humanity is given the freedom to explore their curiosity, guess what? They end up killing the gangsters. Taking vengeance, taking revenge.
Yeah, look, I don't have answers for that. So I say both of your answers are fairly acceptable.
I'm just saying, I would be curious.
But
Imagine there was the purge. I would be curious to explore that. I mean, I've never killed anyone, but
I'll
I'm pretty
stay
sure
in
there's
the-
a lot of mental and psychological things that take place if you
you
cross
must
that line
also remember that
in your life.
there's probably also somebody looking for you, Daryl. I will stay in my house with you. There's probably a guy from Standard 1 that said, you know, I'm going to find Tyron Marinas today and I'm going to kill him. You know what I mean? So I'll stay in my house, lock myself up. Nobody's killing me tonight.
I'm just saying, vanity.
Because
Vanity.
Because I've been looking at, obviously, please, I'm a very much of a novice still, but looking at the other perspectives of the world, not in a I'm looking for something new to believe in, but just to see what other, I won't say religions, but what other people say about it. And those are the big questions of the world, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Satanist or atheist. It still boils down to what makes us do good or what makes us do evil, what makes us do bad, what makes us do good, what makes us work, what makes us lazy. You know, those kind of things are still big questions. And I think it's almost, I don't want to make it sound, it's almost so flimsy, man, to just go, oh no, there's one guy that is controlling all the bad, and that is why we the good guys and we're fighting him. Do you know what I mean? It's almost unacceptable, man. I don't know if you guys feel the same. But
Yeah.
you hear people speak to you and you say, oh, I see you going, this one died in your life or your husband left you or whatever. Yeah, no, it's the devil. Do you know what I mean? How do you react to someone like that without going, oh shit or whatever? How do you like
Bullshit. I call it bullshit.
Cuckoo.
So yeah, no, but that's why I say that's why I enjoy this look there. I've got a question
sorry,
and I
I'm
could get
just-
two quiet answers now. Well,
You could
I
either
could get
offend
two answers
each
I
other,
understand, we put it that way. But
Yeah, it
it's
is.
something that bothers me, man. Like, if I can figure that out for myself, maybe not for the world, man, because I mean the world is now a few thousand years old, man. So it's hard for us to track back where it started. But if I can figure that out for myself, what makes me do evil things or what makes me want sometimes evil things or what the world around me tells me is evil. If I can figure that out, I can maybe help someone else, man. Or I can maybe even just not get into trouble for myself. So those are things that I guess we should all look at, man.
Well, I mean, and I suppose we're heading into a bit of overtime here.
Yeah.
But like if I look at compliant individuals, so salons can now go do business now.
Yep.
And Lisa's sister-in-law is opening one, and now they're now running through the issues that they have, and very compliant with the law and stuff like that. I'm like, but so her brother was on the one Zoom meeting, and he's like, but who's going to enforce it? And I'm also like, I don't know. I really don't know why they're complying to these ridiculous.
I'd pay money to see a policeman stop a colored lady in the middle of her hair being done. The one half is still done. And that guy will die. He's going to put his life in danger.
But the thing, and this is why I say, is that the fear of lawlessness is almost like it's this outside thing, but
Mm.
lawlessness stems from inside and it's born from immaturity. And if you're fighting that internally, you're really just trying to keep the werewolf inside and trying to control him because you know he's inside.
Yeah.
Whereas freedom is you've disciplined yourself, man. You know from the inside out only good things are gonna come out because internally you don't have that internal conflict anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then you're not compliant to government and whatever. And my thing is I don't care what the government wants. It's not looking out for my best interest. It's trying to catch me all the time. And that's what law wants to do.
Or doing what the guys did in that movie that I was talking about. They don't want to keep me alive
the
because they care. They
purge,
want to
yeah.
keep me alive because they need my tax next week.
Yes, I mean the assumption is that people outside of yourself are making decisions for your best interest is delusional. It's borderline insanity for you to think that a government even knows you exist other than your ID number and cares for your well-being while they're trading sugar on the stock market. I don't think they are.
When your president is the one who brought McDonald's here.
Yeah, so I mean it's like, and firstly the people say the government has failed me. What was it supposed to do for you? Why what must the government do for people? It's not meant to do anything for people.
Just give us
Um,
water, guys. That's all I want. Government, just don't
you
keep
know,
me.
like they're only doing the water because we don't want to go fetch our water. So yes, I'll pay you whatever
Yeah, that's
and
Yeah,
make sure that it works.
I'm
But
telling you guys. That was the reality, eh? Queuing for
I
water.
mean, it's not like they owe it to you. You're paying for it. It's a service.
Mm.
Um,
Like
and
ESCOM.
and uh, and amazingly, when there was a water shortage, suddenly we were all to blame. We had to stop doing things. Um, we're still paying for the service
and we're paying
and
more.
paying more now.
We're paying a lot more.
And
Yeah.
I mean, they've never been held to account for anything. So I think what needs to happen in the world is that people need to take far more personal responsibility and actually hold things to account. Like, if I'm working this hard, you can't be messing around, man. No, man, it's not okay. Um,
Yeah. We're not.
yeah, that's my opinion. Anyway,
Yeah, there. That's the podcast. We can do that next week. Responsibility.
Yeah. And just to put into context for those that are still tuning in, we are in overtime. But what Lindley is saying is that basically, if you are a werewolf and you're out there thinking you're a lone wolf, welcome to the wolf pack. And in this wolf pack, we are definitely not hunting the truth. We represent that. You find yourself out there curious because you are not fitting in with the normal dogs and the theology of the pack. We are free thinkers, and curiosity is the reason that we are here. We started asking the question internally, and internally the change needed to take place. It's not just an external thing. So if you bring government into a question like Lindy was mentioning, take ownership over your own thoughts. If you are curious for your existence, welcome to Fresh Space. You are running with a pack of free thinkers. That's the show.